It is as good a time as any to talk about the Portland Fire. No better person to talk about it with than Annie Peterson, who joins us, plus the birth of a new mascot. So much to get into. Locked On Women's Basketball starts now.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and happy Tuesday to you. I am Howard Megdal, welcoming you to Locked On Women's Basketball. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. Of course, you guys keep showing up for us the way we show up for you 6 days a week, over 350,000 of you listening in July alone. Make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. YouTube, for instance, you can see our smiling faces. You can also listen on the audio side and hold up like a picture of us next to your phone. And when I say us, it is not just me, it is the incredible team across the board at the Nine Basketball, powered by The Next. Make sure you subscribe to everything we're doing. $9 a month, $72 a year. You get every bit of it sent right to your inbox. It is a steady IV stream of women's basketball coverage, and it allows us all to live the way we wish. The9basketball.com. We're going to talk to Annie Peterson today about the Portland Fire. I'm really excited to get into some of the specifics. What's working, what needs to happen, how this compares to the Toronto Tempo. By definition, these two are going to be compared to one another probably for many years to come. But first, I want to take you around the league, and I want to hear first from R. Kelly Johnson, who, of course, has our Aces report as part of our team-specific podcasts that have begun here at Locked On Women's Basketball. Well, here she is after the Aces' latest victory, talking about A'ja Wilson. Might have heard of her. Kelly, let's talk a little bit about what A'ja did.
It was too hot in Las Vegas for the Connecticut Sun to handle as the Aces took down the Sun 94-86. A'ja Wilson became the first player in WNBA history to have 30-plus points and 20 rebounds in one game. It was also a big night for Dana Evans as she had 10 points off the bench, going 2 for 2 from 3. When asked about A'ja's big night tonight, head coach Becky Hammon said that it's just A'ja being A'ja. She also highlighted how they wanted to create more opportunities for everyone on the offensive end, which helped increase her rebound numbers as well. Head coach Becky Hammon was also asked about Dana Evans and her performance tonight, to which she said that she is lightning quick and that she is very important to the team. She also said that Dana Evans' ability to impact the game on both sides of the court is different than anyone else out there. Here at Michelob Ultra Arena, the Las Vegas Aces take on the New York Liberty, the reigning champs, at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time on Wednesday.
A lot of big numbers out of that. A'ja being A'ja, yeah, I guess so, but 30 and 20 is big even by A'ja Wilson standards. Couple things that I'm keeping an eye on out of there. Aces have won now 4 straight. They're in the 6th seed, but there is this bunched up group of teams that we talked about. Aces are now just 3 back in the loss column of the New York Liberty, who are second. It's so interesting. I mean, there's just such a big difference in terms of how your season feels qualitatively if you finish second or you finish 9th. But as of right now, the Aces are within striking distance of second, but they are also just 2 losses ahead of the Los Angeles Sparks, who are currently 9th. So a lot riding on the next few weeks in terms of where the Aces project is and what it's going to mean going forward. In terms of forward thinking, the Golden State Valkyries also right there in the mix. A win Monday night. Our Matthew Walter was there. He kind of buried the lead. We'll talk about it in a second. But first, let's hear, hitting threes and how they do it. I guess that's also important. Matthew, take us through it all.
New mascot, Violet the Raven. The team took flight in the second half en route to a 74-57 win over the Connecticut Sun. I'm Matthew Walter, one of the Valkyries beat reporters for the Next and Lockdown Women's Basketball. Golden State knocked down just 3 triples in the first half, but found their shooting rhythm after the break, hitting 10 threes in the second half. The Valkyries moved the ball better after halftime and found the open person more consistently, having 14 assists on their 15 second-half baskets. The night belonged to Tiffany Hayes, Janelle Solana, and Cecilia Zandalicini, who combined to score 50 points while hitting 10 threes. The Golden State was also stout on defense, holding the Sun to just 34% shooting from the floor and Marina Mabrey to just 3 points. Head coach Natalie Nakase said after the game that they were moving the ball quickly in the second half and getting multiple paint touches. When they get multiple paint touches, that's when they're able to get those wide open threes. The Valkyries will head out on the road to face the Mystics on Wednesday for their next game.
Couple of things. I just want to give you an update. As a voter for the lead at the end of the year, I continue to think Natalie Nakase has a really good chance at winning Coach of the Year, certainly at winning my vote for Coach of the Year. If they make the playoffs, I think it's really hard to argue against it, especially if they make the playoffs, even after losing Kayla Thornton. It's also really significant that the LA Sparks are rallying the way they are, 8 of their last 10. The Sparks making the playoffs, the Valkyries making the playoffs. It all puts everyone in those arguments. Similarly, the Atlanta Dream, who are right now tied with the Liberty for the number 2 seed. If they're the number 2 seed this year, how is Carl Smestro not Coach of the Year? So it's really going to be fascinating to see. No bad answers on any of this stuff, but very eager to see it. Again, Matthew just mentions it in passing. He's so busy talking about wins and losses and getting into the paint and paint touches and hitting threes. We have a new mascot. We have a new WNBA mascot, Violet, coming to life out of the egg at halftime. Did it so much more effectively than Dinger when Dinger was sort of hatched. Look up the video if you haven't seen it with the Colorado Rockies. Just a really big moment for Golden State. Again, yes, if they made it to the playoffs, really big deal. I don't know. They had a webcam on the spotted egg. Violet's a Raven, in case you were wondering. I didn't know that. Violet owes a lot to Ellie, but is different from Ellie in some fundamental ways. I do just want to highlight what Chelsea Late says, one of my fellow hosts. So the aesthetic is different. And I'm just quoting Chelsea here. Ellie does Pilates and brunch back to back. Violet goes to the farmer's market. Violet went to theater school, New Chapel Rowan, pre-Good Luck Babe, and volunteers at the library. Ellie teaches dance classes and knows where every happy hour deal in the neighborhood is. Ellie goes to Coachella. Violet goes to Osheaga. I'm gonna take Chelsea's word for it that all of that makes sense. I have no idea, but it's not for me. It's ultimately for Chelsea. Okay, when we come back, Annie Peterson talking about the Portland Fire. They've returned. They even have a name, not a GM yet, but we'll get to it. Much more to come. I'm Howard Megdal. You're listening to Locked On Women's Basketball. But first, Locked On Women's Basketball is brought to you by Game Time. Now, we've all been there, right? You're logging on early. You're waiting forever for the concert tickets to go on sale. You hit refresh over and over and over again, and then your phone dies, the computer doesn't work. I've been there. It's fine. All that happens is I disappoint my daughter, right? No, nice low stakes there for me. Game Time makes it easier. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with killer last-minute deals. You can show not only where your seats are, but a 360-degree view of what the concert, the game will look like. So you can make sure that your daughter is very happy about it. Now, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA NBA for $20 off. Never disappoint your daughter again. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Howard Megdal, Locked On Women's Basketball, back here. And I am joined by somebody I've been delighted to call a friend for many years, somebody whose aesthetic is, what would you say, more Violet, more Ellie? Annie Peterson, our beat reporter for the Portland Fire. And Annie, have they announced a mascot yet in Portland?
No, but I'm
Oh.
definitely Ellie. Definitely more Ellie, for sure. And I don't know
Yes.
how I'm going to follow that. Like, nothing I say will be able to top that. So I'm just going to leave now. Thanks. The Fire are happening, so I can go now.
That's all we need to know. No, it's very kind. But no, we have much to discuss, and you've already done terrific reporting. For those who don't know, Annie does everything. A terrific reporter at the Associated Press, an original founding writer at The Nine Daily, covering Soccer Monday, and our Portland Fire beat reporter. And how exciting that we get to say Portland Fire and not just Portland WNBA team. How exciting that we get to report on things happening and not just things that are not happening. So just like status report, vibe check. Where are we with the Portland Fire, who begin play in significantly less than a year?
Well, let's rewind a little bit and go back to the beginning. So I want to give a little bit of history for those who might not know anything about the Fire. The Fire were one of the original, or one of the early WNBA teams, played from 2000 to 2002, and did very well attendance-wise, had a very devoted fan base, attracted 8,000, really, a core group of about 8,000 fans per game that were very enthusiastic, had Jackie Stiles playing for them. And then in 2002, when the NBA decided to divest in their WNBA teams and pass ownership on to the owners, Paul Allen, the owner of the NBA's Trailblazers, decided, I'm not gonna pony up for the WNBA team. So it folded. Fast forward a little bit to the mid 2010s, and women's sports specifically had kind of a renaissance in Portland. There was the Portland Thorns that were getting 20,000 fans per game, blowing away the NWSL records, won the first NWSL championship, had Alex Morgan playing for them. It was a thing. Down the road in Corvallis, Scott Ruck was taking the Oregon State Beavers to, I think it was 4 consecutive NCAA Sweet 16 appearances. Went to the Final Four in 2016 with Sydney Weiss. And then a little further down the road in 2016, a young woman named Sabrina Ionescu showed up on the campus at the University of Oregon and changed the trajectory of that program.
I wonder whatever happened to her.
Yeah. It's,
Never see her around.
She just kind of vanished. So women's sports was really, having a moment in Oregon, to say the least. And 2023, early on, Ron Wyden invited Kathy Engelbert to Portland, and they were going to have a panel to talk about women's sports. But really, it was a rally for to push Portland as the next WNBA franchise. And Scott Ruck was there. Kelly Graves was there. The representatives for the Trailblazers were there. Karina LeBlanc, who was then the GM of the Portland Thorns, was there. I was there. Jenny Nguyen was there because it was at the Sports Bra. So it was a rally, and in the background, standing in the back of the room, was a man named Kirk Brown, who was very quiet, didn't say anything. He was the co-founder of a company called Zoom Info, which is a local company here in this area. I think it's based in Vancouver. Didn't say anything, but we all kind of knew that he was the guy that was looking to put the money into the new franchise.
And just he did, and everyone lived happily ever after, right?
Right. So everything was a go. Right. We were a week away from an announcement.
Yeah.
This was a few months after the panel rally.
Yeah.
And we were getting, we were all getting emails saying, this is going to happen. Here's where you should free up some time. Here's when the press conference is going to be. The rumor was that Nike already had T-shirts made for the whole thing. And then all of a sudden, it didn't happen. Kathy Engelbert sent out an email that went to Ron Wyden that he provided to the media. And basically it said that the problem was the Moda Center. The Moda Center is going to host some NCAA women's tournament games in 2030, and also wants to host the NBA All-Star game. But certain conditions have to be met. There has to be retractable seats. There has to be more restrooms. They have to do this stuff. So the work has to be done during the summer because it can't happen during the NBA season. That means that whatever WNBA team goes in there, they're not going to be able to play at that place for two summers. So they're going to have to go somewhere else.
And critically, their first 2 summers, right?
Right. No. Second 2.
Okay.
So the first summer will be at the Moda Center, but that's getting ahead of ourselves. So, so what she wasn't saying is that actually the financing fell through for them. So
arguably more important.
Right. So the financing fell through, and not to disparage Kirk Brown, he's a nice, for all practical purposes, I met him. He's a nice fellow. But the financing wasn't there. That was what happened.
Right.
So San Francisco got the expansion team, and we see their launch was wildly successful. And so Portland had to wait a little bit longer, but there was always pretty much the feeling that if an owner stepped forward, that Portland was next in line. And then came the Bethals, who bought the Portland Thorns. They also own, the family also has a part ownership stake in the NBA Sacramento Kings.
Right.
So they've got kind of a sports background. Lisa Bethal had a swimsuit kind of company for a while. They do a lot of real estate. So they've got the money. They came forward. They bought the Thorns, $65 million. And then they came forward and bought the WNBA team, which creates kind of a really interesting dynamic where both the women's teams in Portland are owned by one ownership group.
Well, and I mean, it's fascinating, right? This idea that for a long time we've talked about having an NBA owner own the WNBA team allows for certain things that don't have to be repeated, and that you're able to essentially lean into doing things with shared facilities. This is a brand new paradigm. This is multiple women's teams. There's multiple well-capitalized women's teams in the same town. And it's not the same because I looked into it and you can't even dribble a basketball on a soccer field, but there is clearly an opportunity to have a lot of overlap. Now, I want to get into more about how and why. We are going to get to a quick break, but there's much more to get to with Annie Peterson. I am Howard Megdal. You're listening to Locked On Women's Basketball. All right, back here with Annie Peterson, telling us all things and schooling us on the history of Portland here. I do want to just isolate on, if we can, what we've learned the last few weeks about what they've now done. Because again, there was a team president who was in for about 2 months and then is no longer there. So what have they done to play catch up? And sort of where do you think, how close to caught up are they? Because we're sort of chasing a bit of an ephemeral target here at the moment. There's no critical on August 12th, an expansion team needs to be here. But I'm just, what is your read of that?
Right. So, going along with the history part of the whole thing, right? They got the team, and then things kind of like stalled, it felt like. They eventually named Inky Sohn the president of the team. And then you didn't hear about him for a long time. They made one public hire, which was a digital media person, and that was it. And so there were a lot of questions as to what was going on. And then all of a sudden, Inky was gone after 3 months. And people were like, oh no, right? This is going very badly.
Right.
To say the least. And so, in walks Claire Hamill from Nike.
Yeah.
Longtime Nike executive. I know about her. I had never met her personally, but her reputation precedes her.
Definition of a steady hand, in other words.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Right. Everybody knows Claire. Right. Everybody who's anybody knows who Claire is. If you haven't met her, you still know who she is. And things started happening, right? Claire takes over and things start happening. And there's a team name, right? It was leaked a little bit by my good friend, Sean, who had the wherewithal to check for trademarks. What an amazing reporter. Yeah. And figured out that it was going to be the Fire and that they were going to go back to the name. And then they had a really great public rally at the Moda Center where tons of people showed up, a bunch of former WNBA stars, including Lindsay Yamasaki, who I covered at Stanford back in the day. Just an amazing array of WNBA talent. And Claire spoke to the crowd. The logo is a hit. I've already seen people wearing t-shirts with the logo around town, which is very encouraging.
Yes.
Then they had they're calling kind of their program the epicenter of women's sports, right? They're referring to Portland as the epicenter of women's sports because we have the Thorns and the Fire. So they had a big forum at Nike, which was amazing. Don Staley spoke. Lots of other, very influential people in the sporting world spoke. People from Wasserman, Sarah Spain was the moderator. Annie was I'm sorry if I butcher her name. Costible?
Annie Costabile, yes.
She was one of the moderators. We love her. She's the other Annie. The younger and cuter Annie. So that happened, and all of a sudden the vibe shifted. And all of a sudden it became, oh, Portland's got this.
Right.
And it is on track and it is happening. And the general manager is going to be named, from what my sources say, by the end of the summer.
Very good.
And we're a go.
So it doesn't matter at some, and I know this is a weird question to ask. Maybe there's not an answer to it, but it doesn't necessarily matter if they've done it the same timing as the Toronto Tempo, and we have a terrific story from Chelsea Late over on the 9 Basketball right now about the fact that, you've got Monica Rogers in the GM's chair, Eli Horowitz, who in my mind should be a GM already, a really qualified AGM. They are deep into talent evaluation. Obviously, Portland's got to play catch up, but they also don't need to field a team until next May. Are there any things, if they name a GM end of the summer, are there any other things where you say, gee, Portland's really got to get this done by this date, is the way you see it?
Well, Claire is interim.
Right.
Officially. So, they'll need to get a full-time president who's going to take over the team. I have a feeling that Claire will at least be there through inaugural day.
Listen, Lynn Dunn was interim general manager of the Indiana Fever until she wasn't.
Right,
there are some times where, man, this fit is so good. I remember when Steve Fisher was the interim head men's basketball coach at University of Michigan. And then, a decade later, he's still there. So,
right. You never know. You never know. I get the feeling, that she wanted to retire for a reason. So, then, yes, a GM and then the talent evaluation will have to start. Mm-hmm. Are they behind? Yes, they are behind. Toronto also got a head start, right? So you have to take that into consideration. And, comparing the two is kind of like, okay, well, put Portland on the same timeline as Toronto, maybe they're not that far behind.
Yeah.
They just had a couple of extra little bumps and bruises along the way, including, the original team falling through and all of that. So perhaps they aren't that far behind in terms of a timeline compared to Toronto, but because of those delays and because of the little bumps that they've had along the way, yeah, they're behind.
It is interesting to me what you say. And I think this goes back to, there's not a need for panic if you are a Portland Fire fan here, because it sounds like they have the time to get it right. But if they have a GM end of the summer, in your view, I guess bottom line is they're on target for where they need to be rather than worrying about Toronto. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, this is all really wonderful to hear. Again, I can't stress to you guys enough how exciting it is. This is exciting for me personally, that Annie Peterson is covering the Portland Fire for us at the 9 Basketball. Annie, thank you so much for being part of this podcast. Thank you, as always, to our listeners for making us your first listen every day. We'll be with you with Lynn Roberts, head coach of the Los Angeles Sparks, tomorrow. Until then, I am Howard Megdal, wishing all of you a wonderful Tuesday.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.